Friends and neighbors, sisters and brothers, ladies and gentlemen, all you citizens of the world, we're here for you with another edition of Live from the Heartland, also known as Heartland at Home. This is edition, I'm not sure of the number, but this is for the week of the 27th, and we're really glad today to have a couple of wonderful women talking music. The incomparable Barbara Dane and our own Katie Tuten from the beloved Hideout. And all of you out there, be it on air, stream, TV, or the internet, thanks for joining the conversation.
We start our week chagrined at more mass shootings in our country. And I'll just note in passing that it's easier to buy a gun in Colorado than it is to vote in Georgia. There's something skewed with our values right now. Repeal the Second Amendment.
The House is preparing a $3 trillion bill for infrastructure, universal pre-K and climate change. The Congress is considering DC statehood, which will mean 2 more senators. What else we got out here?
Well, on the good news front, over 1,000 offenders have gained early release here in Illinois from prisons. And this struggle, which has been ongoing, has been led by Sheila Betty and Alan Mills. And we're so glad they won this case in court. We'll look forward to more details as we know them.
We want to note that our neighboring Evanston has passed one of the first reparation measures in the country. They are using a portion of the tax received on cannabis sales to begin a reparations program centering initially on housing. More to come.
And also in a shortened COVID segment, we want to encourage you to use the Cook County toll-free number, 833-308-1988. That seems to be a really successful way to make an appointment if you haven't yet gotten a
Katie,
shot.
you had a really good wrap-up point for Women's History Month.
Well, it was Equal Pay Day earlier this week, and it was the Women's March that reminded us to imagine ourselves at work, our 9-to-5 job, and only to have your boss come in and tell you at 2:40 p.m. the rest of the day you're working for free. Another way to put it is, because of your gender, you'd have to work 15 months to make what guys are making in 12 months. Happy Women's History Month.
And with that said, we're going to listen to a little bit of Little Maggie by our next guest, Barbara Dane, out there on the West Coast. We'll be back in a minute.
When I was a young girl, I used to seek pleasure. When I was a young girl, I used to drink ale straight out of the alehouse, then to the jailhouse, straight out of the barroom, down to my grave.
We now are going to Barbara Dane, and that was one of her tunes. Barbara, it is so good to see you again, even if it's on Zoom. I met your son Pablo in Havana when I was there with Athletes United for Peace, and I missed his performance, but we hooked up and we brought him to the Heartland Cafe on numerous occasions.
I know
we
you
couldn't
did.
bring him. We couldn't bring him when Bush was in power, but under the Democrats, he played a lot of times in Chicago. And
I love the fact that he plays Chicago, because I used to love playing Chicago myself.
It's a great town. I hope you can come back here again sometime and pay us a visit.
But in spirit, I'm there.
All right. I did get to meet you twice. Once was when you were playing with Pablo at Freight and Salvage in Berkeley, and
Right.
another time more recently in Oakland. And we want to thank you so much for joining us. And let's start by asking you, how are you doing during this time of the pandemic?
Well, frankly, I'm doing fine because I don't go out of the house. I'm too old to run around, and to do much social life anyway. And what I really prize is the fact that Nina my daughter has moved to stay with me this last year and has been taking impeccable care of me all the time, even though she has cancer. And um, she she sacrifices a lot of her own self sometimes. I think she doesn't like to admit that, but anyway, she's she's a reason I got to be 94, actually. Yeah,
Well, that's
Caregivers are
good.
essential, particularly those in our family. Some of us have been on that journey as well. God bless you, Nina. Could you share with us some of your musical history, some of the high points as you think back on a really varied career? I mean, folk music and some R&B, and then there's this whole Cuban thread, and we'll talk
Jazz and
later about.
blues.
Well, I always just sort of followed the music, and my mind about what I was going to play or sing was more concentrated on the content than the style.
Hmm.
I've never particularly been interested in sticking to any particular style because I'm going to be singing to people who like different kinds of music. I'll try to bring them something they enjoy, But I like the challenge of trying different styles and just being able to float around in the music world and pick up a thread here and there if I like that song and it's in a different genre than I've ever sung before. Well, I'll work on that a while and probably have fun with it.
Mhm.
I started out wanting to do a lot of folk music because I was hungry for that. I was raised by parents from Jonesboro, Arkansas, and they came to Detroit and I was born. Okay, so what they were doing was busily trying to erase all signs of hillbilliness in themselves,
Yeah.
accents, customs, songs,
Yeah.
anything. The culture was, as far as they were concerned, the culture was back there and never to be spoken about. So I felt like I had no culture. I knew all around me were kids from different countries. Parents were from wherever, from Iran, from Mexico, from everywhere you can think of. And I would say, well, I'm nothing when they ask, what are you? I'm
Mm.
nothing, because I didn't have any sense of a root, a base. So I was looking for that, and I guess folk songs filled that gap a lot, fill up that void. And then Pete Seeger came to town and asked me if I'd be the person who pulled together a People Songs branch, which was a political activist singer's idea. And so I thought that was really cool. And I was living in Detroit. It's Depression times. It's after the war. Then after the war, there was all this union organizing going on. So I learned a lot of union songs and I sang out in front of the shop gates and stuff because that's where the people were and what was going on. And so then, I don't know, I fancied myself a folk singer because that's what everybody was calling that kind of a thing, someone who had that kind of repertoire. And I don't know, I eventually also liked pop songs and jazz and
Mhm.
liked everything. I was singing with a little pop, in high school, there's always a little pickup band here and there, kids that like to play. So I would sing Blue Moon, you saw me standing alone, and some of those silly pop songs. And, I enjoyed that. I thought that was very hip, that I could go from one to the other. And then I began to, I don't know, once I was bitten with any kind of a music genre, I had to have it. I had to do a little of it.
Well, it's interesting. You're talking about you're growing up in Detroit and you felt like your roots had been denied because your parents are trying to turn over a new leaf. So you go out looking for your roots in the protest movements of the time. Some
Well,
people referred to you as an opposition artist. Is that
opposition
a
art.
comfortable label for you to use about
I
why
never
certain
quite.
kind-
I don't think I've heard that before. Opposition artist. I am a resistance artist.
Mhm.
I don't just knee jerk oppose things. I resist the things that are wrong. So, and I try to encourage others to do the same. That may be my
Barbara,
problem. I'm the perennial outside agitator because what else, that's what it is.
right on.
Yeah.
Well, now yonder stands little Maggie, got a dram glass in her hand, and she's drinking down her trouble. She's fooling some other man. Tell me how can I ever stand just to see those two blue eyes? They are shining like a diamond in the sky.
Can you talk a little bit about your political development? You've mentioned starting in Detroit, singing, for people on strikes and the Pete Seeger group. But, you have quite a rich history of coming out of Detroit, being in Chicago, singing with Earl Father Hines, all kind of people. Then you go to Cuba. The FBI chases you around. Tell us a little
Really,
bit
they
about.
didn't start then. They started when I was 18.
Aha.
By the time I went to Cuba, I was in my 30s at least. And no, they've been chasing me around ever since I was a teenager. I have evidence now. I have a big thick file. I can't even pick it up. It's over there somewhere. And some of it I have on CDs even. I started with the papers were coming so thick and fast once I got past the barriers of the FOIA, they weren't coming fast, but they were coming thick. And I said, why don't you put them on a disc? And they started putting them on a disc. So I have a lot of evidence to the fact that they wasted tax money for some odd 50 years, 60 years on me.
Is
And
that the case? Wow.
I don't know what they thought I was going to do. I was doing what I was going to do, and they're not going to stop that. So what did they think they were going to accomplish with all this documentation? And I once asked Leonard Boudin, the famous civil rights lawyer.
Yes.
I asked him why he thought I was not brought in front of the HUAC, the House Un-American Committee, or all the threats that they put on Pete Seeger and others. And he said, I think it's because you've always been so out front with your whatever you're doing and what your connections are. They have nothing to extort you with, They have no way of twisting your arm, so they know you're not gonna. And every time they would come around and knock on the door and say, "Well, Miss Dane, are you ready to, would you like to have a discussion?" And I would just tell them to get the hell out, and basically gave them the middle finger, and that was our whole relationship for years. So.
Did your finger get worn out the last 4 or 5 years?
They actually gave up on me finally, I think, because they figure what good is an old 90-year-old going to do? They probably closed the book on that a long while back.
Well, I'm going down the track, I got tears in my eyes, trying to read a letter from my home. If this train runs me right, I'll be home by tomorrow night, 'cause I'm 900 miles from my home. And I hate to hear that lonesome whistle blow.
I want to talk a little bit more about your music, and
Right.
and in particular, what memories do you have of some other women who were great to sing with, or you were able to produce through Paradigm Records?
Oh,
I know
well,
that's a big question, but
it is a big question.
name one or two
Yeah.
favorites. It's
I
Women's
seldom
History
got a
Month,
chance
so
to sing with
that's
other women, but I did sing with Fannie Lou Hamer in Mississippi for a couple of nights and
wow.
watched what the effect that she had on her community. And
Oh, what an amazing experience.
she's probably got to be one of my number one heroes in the world. Now we're talking about women. You're asking about specifically women.
Yes.
Yeah, I hardly ever got to sing with women. Nobody asked me to.
Tell us about some guys.
But the guys, well, the musicians.
Yeah.
Um, some of the best ones, some of the ones I cherish the most are completely unknown still. And one of them is Kenny Whitson. His name is Kenny Whitson.
Mm.
Kenny was his family was Jehovah's Witnesses, and he was raised that way, not to go fight in any wars. So he was a conscientious objector in
Yeah.
World War II. And for that, he went to a prison camp out in the, just the same as the Japanese camps were out in the far reaches of the country, out where nobody could notice them, supposedly. They had also had conscientious objectors of any stripe in there. And Kenny, at 18, 19, 20, he was one of those. Well, he was also dying to be a musician, and so he learned a lot of music there because he met up with another guy and they swapped what they knew. By the time he got out of the conscientious objector camp, he was a pretty damn good piano player. Well, at the time I met him, he was the kind of piano guy, the accompanist that you dream of, because he could right away grasp what I was getting at. He knew why I was singing the song, and he would egg it along just enough in the right direction. And he had a way of, he could pick up if I thought of a song that I hadn't sung for 20 years and I wanted to sing it, and I'm on stage in the middle of a show, I go, oh, that, I want to try to do that. I tell the audience, so I want to, I let them know I wasn't prepared. But okay, so I start the song. I'm playing the guitar, rudimentary. I never played anything but banga, banga, banga. But I'm playing the guitar and Kenny's playing, but he's listening. So the new song, I'm going, that is, it's an old song, but it's new to him. I sing the first verse, he listened. Okay, he's got it now. He comes in. And then the third time, the bass player, Wellman Bro was the bass player who put the hot in the hot jazz back in the day, because he was Duke Ellington's bass player.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah. And he was quite renowned, but he had retired and he thought he wasn't going to play anymore, and we recruited him back to go to work with us. And
to get into your business a little bit, Barbara Dane, can I ask you about A Grain of Sand that Paradigm put out?
Yeah, well, that came about because I met when I had formed this record label. It was I was trying to document all the resistance going on in the world, all the liberation movements and all the revolutionary movements, and then I'd realize, okay, I don't have very much from inside the U.S. and there's plenty going on. So I'm looking all the time and listening to everybody and seeing where can I find. And then Ed Pearl at the Ash Grove in Los Angeles put on a show one night. Just astonishing. I don't know how he did it or where he got the people, but he got a group of Vietnamese who were there. This is a long story, so I won't tell it, I guess, but about them. Well, they were youngsters who were brought here by the US and put in school in LA, in the LA area, in order to train them so that by the time they got rid of whatever, the war, they could bring in these trained American style bureaucrats.
Mm-hmm.
Well, these kids were not buying it. And Ed recruited them to come in and sing. They weren't a group of singers or anything, but they sang Vietnamese songs together. So they did that at the risk of their job, their life, future, their everything. Right after that came this other group. Oh, American kids, but they're Japanese. Japanese American. Now they play their songs, and I thought before they even got halfway through it, I knew I was going to record them. And it turned out to be the first album anybody put out of Asian American consciousness and a sense of unity, and here we are and we're active in the communities, because there was always a tendency to keep your head down, and this album helped to break it out, and I'm very proud of it because of that.
The album is called, I believe, A Grain of Sand: Music for the Struggle by Asians in America.
Exactly.
And you put it out from Paradigm Records, and let us ask you, how did you and your late husband Irwin Silber, who we knew from Sing Out and The Guardian, not the British Guardian, but the radical one here,
The real
how
one.
did you end up starting Paradigm, and what does Paradigm mean, and what's going on with your label?
Oh, well, I started it because I'd been to Cuba to the Cuban cultural folks, and mostly Ida Santa Maria and others at the Casa de las Americas. They put on a festival. It wasn't a festival because Woodstock had just happened, and they didn't want to confuse what we were going to be doing with laying in the mud and drinking wine. You know, they called it an encuentro, a meeting. And it was, we had meetings and discussed, you know, how the work we were doing and the obstacles we were facing, and a lot of things. But we sang for each other, for the Cubans. We traveled around the country in smaller groups, 3 or 4 groups would go together to all around the country. And I heard all these great songs coming from people all over Latin America and from other parts of the world, and Europe especially. And when I got home, I thought these songs have to be known by the American people.
Mhm.
We have to know, these songs helped us to know that there is a movement, for example, in Ireland, you know, to get free of the British, or a movement in, all the different movements that were represented there. Anyway, I thought that people have to know these songs, or at least hear them. So I tried to translate them and make singable translations, and I made a couple of successful singable translations. And I call them successful because they work. That's all. Nobody knows about them. But that didn't work right. And then I tried singing them in the languages. Well, like, God, what a task to learn all these different songs in these different languages. No, finally I said, well, we have to have a record label. We must have a way for the people to hear those voices, hear those singers, know their story. And so I started telling everybody, you know, friends are always saying, well, what are you doing these days? Well, I'm going to start a record label. What are you doing? "Oh, I'm going to start a record label." I kept on saying that. And finally, somebody came up with a possible investor who put a few bucks in. And because we didn't have any money to start it with. Paradigm, the word paradigm, I didn't know Spanish, but I had heard the word, and it sounded kind of like, you know, Americans could pronounce it, and it would mean it's a big wall. Okay, so it's a big wall of culture that will, or whatever, you know. And besides that, the Fugs had been singing "Up Against the Wall," you know.
It isn't nice to block the doorway. It isn't nice to go to jail. There are nicer ways to do it, but the nice ways always fail. It isn't nice, it isn't nice. You told us once, you told us twice. But if that's freedom's price, we don't mind.
Barbara, let us ask you, are you making any music these days, and what are you listening to?
I'm making music all the time. I'm irrepressible in that way. I can't stop, but making it in public and having people pay for it, no more. That's over. I'm not going to do it. I did a whole string of concerts for around my 90th birthday because my daughter and my son were both very actively set all this up mechanism, and it was, I think what they were doing secretly is putting goals in front of me so that I would want to live longer, and I would.
They did a good job.
Get out there. And they damn well did a good job. Yeah. Yeah, so I did, a major all-night concert, all evening concerts in several, couple at the Yoshi's, the famous jazz club here, one at the SF Jazz, which is the jazz capital of the West Coast, down at UCLA at the I forget the name of the big, it's a famous room. Anyway, I did a lot of those concerts, and I came to New York and did something at Joe's Pub, and I think a couple of nights there. And then I went to Cuba with the band, my band, I say a band, but it's my accompanist. It's not you can't afford to keep people, a staff of musicians when you don't work all the time. You have to, one feeds the other. So no, these are people that live in the area and are the best and are available when I need them.
Well, Barbara, let me ask you, before we let you go, only because we're limited in our time, do you have anything you want to add, or do you want to do a little short a cappella?
Well, I can always do that, I guess, but
That'd be wonderful. People would love it.
It'll sound really scratchy and like an old lady, but I can do it anyway. But what would I do?
You understands little Maggie.
Well, a couple of years ago, I was trying to find a song, a little something to stick into a program, not the whole song, but a little
ditty
stab of this. And I looked around online and I found this little verse, which I then fixed up my way, and it was, I wrote to the guys in Australia who had written it, and they wrote back saying, sure, you can use it. Yeah, sure. And since then have been generous. They've even donated to the film that's being made about me. The guys in Australia whose song I was basically stealing. Great guys. And the song, the verse goes, hey, Mr. Tangerine Man, build a wall for me. I'm so stupid that I don't know what you're doing, or something like that. I forget what it is. It just, I don't know. I can't sing. What could I sing else? What? My favorite way to end a program is Beverly Grant is a great songwriter. You should have her sometime.
Okay.
You know her? Do you know her?
I know the name.
She's on Paradigm. She has a group on Paradigm. She's also very active and wonderful, and directs a working class women's chorus of about 40 women that she directs for decades now. She's been, and she sings a lot and writes a lot. And anyway, the song that I of hers that I appropriated because it's so exactly right, and it makes the audience all stand up. And it goes, the chorus goes, together we can move mountains, alone can't move at all. Whoa, together we can move mountains, alone can't move at all. So that's the ending of a lot.
Wonderful, wonderful. We like that. And we love you, Barbara.
Well, we love you here, even though we don't able to get our arms around you and hug you. But thank you both for being here and being interested in all this and doing the work you do all the time.
Mention your website.
Right on, sister. Thanks so much. And we're going to go out with one of Barbara's tunes.
Can you remember to mention my website so everybody
Absolutely.
will, and what is the website? The website BarbaraDane.net.
And the film.
And people should know there's a biographical film being made about me by Maureen Gosling, who is a protege and a very incredible editor and director that came up under Les Blanc, all of his documentaries.
Oh, I love Les Blanc. I met him in Berkeley. I bought his films.
Well, Maureen was his right-hand person for a long time, and he eventually took center stage with the direction, and she's the one who's making my film. And they need to raise some money to finish making it. So I want people to check in and help us out if you can.
Right on, sister. All
Love.
power to the people, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes.
We'll see you soon. I'm
All
coming
right.
to the West Coast.
Good. Good.
All right.
Be there.
Easier to pretend I'll see them again so soon. Leave me with the nighttime, my train ride, and this gay moon. And I'll write a poem about you. Text my mama good night. Try to choose between this bed or your room. Be unable to decide. Wonder if I'm fooling myself. Is this a pretend? Honest little heart, so hard to find. Honest little friend. I have so many stories between my teeth. So why's all this silence stopping me before I speak?
Oh, that was lovely. And I guess that's on the CD that you're selling as a benefit. Hello, Katie Tuten. Welcome to Heartland at Home.
Thanks.
We're so glad that you are part of our community because as a venue owner, you and your husband are terrific. But as an organizer, look, you're even better. So happy. The Hideout is a wonderful venue that everybody knows about. It's hidden away in a very funny little corner of the world, across from where all the snow shovels used to hang out. Are they still there? The snow plows?
No, they're not, but we used to love it because we would be the first street plowed in the city.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, part of why we reached out to you is the incredible cutting edge work that you've done previously in something called Civil, and it's now expanded to something called NIVA, or I'm not sure how you use that. Can you tell us what those words, what those anachronisms mean?
Sure. So Civil is the Chicago Independent Venue League. And Civil is made up now. There's probably about 40 members. We started with a core group probably about 3 years ago. And, you know, we stuck together. And then when this crisis hit with COVID crisis, that's an understatement, the pandemic, we got on a call with people from across the country. There's probably about 30 to 50 of us on the call. It was the Independent Venue Week group. And many of them had known about the Chicago Independent Venue League because once we had formed, they were flying us around the country asking us how it was that we all came together. So my 30 years of being in a social work and not-for-profit and sort of like a community organizer, we are happy to give them what our lessons learned and the assets that we had. So when COVID hit, we were all kind of in a panic mode. We decided, you know, the group was like, we need to have a group similar to Civil, but across the country. And that's when NIVA was born. Now, Seattle also had a group. Portland sort of had a group. So there were groups across the country kind of bubbling up. But now NIVA or NIVA, people call it different. We are more than 3,000 members strong. And we, you know, I mean, it's amazing what we are able to do in a year. And I'll never forget, I was on the call when we were interviewing lobbyists. They said, wow, you know, being a new organization, you'll do really well if you get 50,000 phone calls. And I was like, I don't think you realize who we are. Like, we have extensive email. And Kate, we got over 2 million phone calls to Congress.
Rockin'. Yes.
Power to the people, right?
Amen,
So-
my sister.
I understand the new stimulus package, in fact, has some money budgeted for operating arenas like the Hideout. What's it like to collaborate with competitors for music and entertainment? And, how do you understand how the grant process might work?
Oh,
now
my
to
word,
make
yes.
Keep the money flowing?
Yes. So, we were very active participants in the drafting of the bill, which originally started as Save Our Stages and then was folded into the bill that was passed on December 27th called the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. And included in that is venues, movie theaters, some museums, aquariums, zoos, if they have stages, talent agents. I think that's everyone.
Mhm.
To your question of how we work together, we are lucky with Civil. We had already worked together. So we already had a very well-established relationship and, knew how to navigate these unusual waters. So, we would talk about things like, who's your heating and cooling guy? Very concrete issues. We would never talk about bands, right? I mean, because we were all bidding on the same bands. I'll never forget one time at the end of the meeting, we closed the meeting. I said, all right, who got the Jeff Parker show? All bid on it. And it was great because a really small club got the show because they wanted it so much. They reconfigured their venue and we were like, bravo, we're glad you got it. But we had already figured out how to work together. It does get weird sometimes, but we were all in this together. And I'll tell you, if I didn't have those guys, we probably would have been closed by now because, we would support each other and call each other and ask each other advice and cry on each other's shoulders. And we were there to help each other because we really believe that it's a very complicated ecosystem. So you need a hideout to have the metro. You need the metro to have the hideout. We all work together and want to see each other succeed. The other thing is we were unaware, but apparently Chicago is like the crown jewel of independent venues. We have in fact, all of our venues are mom and pops, they're independently owned. There's, a couple of that are run by other entities, the multinational, but that's very unusual. So we wanted to maintain that.
So,
Katie Tuten, who are your biggest allies, both local and national, in doing this work to bring back our venues?
A very good question. So we are very fortunate in the state of Illinois to have Senator Durbin and Duckworth. They were on right away. They got it. And again, very proud to say we had 14 of our 18 congressional members co-sign the bill, which was phenomenal.
that sounds like a partisan divide if ever I heard one.
Absolutely. And Quigley, I have to say, Quigley was the first to sign on. He was amazing. And I did the research, and I think Representative Quigley has the third most, out of the whole country, he has more venues. He's number 3 in the country. So he had a lot of his constituents that own venues. And then Jan Schakowsky, of course, wonderful. Brad Schneider, who is on the Small Business Administration. So, Lauren Underwood, she was wonderful. She said, she wanted to talk to people in her district. And I was like, right on, sister, I will find you those venue owners. And
Her district is huge.
her district is huge. But 14 out of 18 and 2 of those that didn't co-sponsor are gone. They weren't running for re-election. So, they and the other 2, one of them was very firmly behind an alternative bill. We understood that. And the other one, frankly, we just couldn't find a venue in their district. We wanted to get 18 of 18 because I have to put this in there. State of Illinois got the second most in the country. I was like, take that, New York. The state that beat us was California. And I'm like, well, they have so many more people. But it just shows, it speaks to how people are so vested here in our state. And we are participatory politics.
I love hearing that, Kate.
Yeah.
Hideout has always been a great community member, and like we did with the Heartland, we found that the more you can engage with the community, the better it is for business, of course. And I'm sure you've continued to help out during the pandemic. And how did that happen when you're close? I mean, mutual aid societies down in your neck of the woods. And what surprised you about how we can help each other?
Well, first of all, bravo to the Heartland. I mean, you guys were mentors and guides to us. I mean, we always look to all the things you guys did because you were so vested in your community and would host meetings for community activists and such. Well, we at the Hideout, we are really scrappy. And so we were like, oh my gosh, we got to start streaming shows immediately, mainly because we needed to get money in the pockets of the artists, right? And so one of the first things we did was we made Hideout bucks. My father was like, that's counterfeiting. I'm like, saw the money, like John Langford designed one of the bills. So we sold them for $25 each. And you can redeem them at the Hideout for $20. And the artists got $5 for every one. So each of those artists made $1,000.
Nice.
And we continue to do many initiatives like that. So if we had t-shirts, we would give a percentage of the sales to the artists. And then we continue to do veggie bingo.
Veggie bingo.
Veggie bingo.
Veggie bingo. What is veggie bingo? I love that. I'm just saying it.
Yeah, veggie bingo. So all the money raised at veggie bingo goes to local community gardens. And when we did veggie bingo online, we realized very quickly that there was a number of people that were on that lived alone. You could just see it. And we never talked about COVID. And many people, like, you're in the chat on the side, they would say, this is the one thing I look forward to every week. And so then we rolled into the winter months. We used to do soup and bread, and all the money from soup and bread would go to food pantries. So we were like, well, soup and bread ain't gonna work. So we came up with this thing called Rec Room. Imagine your parents' basement with paneling, right?
Right.
We did trivia, spelling bee, grab bag, and show and tell. And we raised thousands and thousands of dollars for food pantries. In fact, the last show is next Wednesday. And the shows are all free. And you just donate to the food pantry of that week. And I think 2 weeks ago, Casa Catalina in the back of the Yards neighborhood raised $2,000. So we continue to stay active with our community, and we're still streaming shows.
Katie, very quickly, what other events do you have coming up in the next few weeks?
So we have John Langford on Saturday, John and Three Blokes. And you'll note that it's at an unusual time. It's at 5:00. And that's because John's friends in Wales, we partnered with the bar in Wales to help them raise money. And then, we have Tasha on April the 9th, and she filmed actually in the Hideout. John Langford also filmed in the Hideout. And then Andrew Bird, we're a co-promoter, and that is April the 11th. And Andrew has been so great to us. I mean, he did a show where we co-promoted, and it probably covered our light bill for like 2 months. Jeff Tweedy too. I mean, all of a sudden Civil, I'll look in the Civil account and they would just throw money in there. The other thing that I want to mention that's super important is, so Civil started a fund called Civil Save, SAVE, staff, artists, and venue. So the first rollout is staff, and we've raised approximately $85,000. So the applications close on Sunday. And the really cool thing about this, Michael and Kate and Tom, is the staff designed the entire thing. Owners had nothing. We were like, it's your money. You figure out how to spend it, who should get funded. And it was all driven by the staff. They did all the work for it. And so the applications are still available. So CIVLchicago.com/save. So if there are people out there, they don't have to work at one of our venues. They could work at any, bar or whatever. People that are struggling, we encourage them to apply.
Katie Tuten, I can't think of a better way to close out Women's History Month than you and Barbara Dane sharing our stage today and telling us, giving us really good lessons on how to organize. The last question I can't ask you because I know you'd talk forever on it. So we're going to have you back to tell us what we should not return to normal after we get our shots, since normal wasn't really working for everybody.
Yeah.
So, so much blessings and peace to you and yours. And thank you for being all that you are.
Oh, my word. Thanks to you guys. We learned.
Come on, sister.
All right. Rising up angry, right?
Oh, hallelujah.
Yeah. All right. See ya.
I was born a rake and a rambling boy through many strong cities. There I've been. I sailed this world, sailed it round and round, encircle my love, encircle my love. And at the ends of the earth, I'll tell you what I found. 16 horses and a golden crown. Tip away from the sun, let it rain from above. Encircle my love, encircle my love. Once I long to say goodbye. Leaving gave me peace, to this I cannot lie. Now I'm just a poor boy, so far from home am I. And I just wanna hold you in my arms before I die. Go ahead.
Well, that was some soulful music from Jimbo Mathis and Andrew Bird, who are going to return and play with our friends at Hideout on April 11th. That was a joy to meet and talk with Katie Tuten. Today, Saturday, the second meetup to learn basics in fruit tree maintenance at Triangle Park Community Orchard at 1750 West June Way, led by Chicago Park District. It starts at 11 a.m. right after the show.
And also today, later in the afternoon, our hometown team, our neighborhood team, Loyola, who beat Illinois unexpectedly, I thought, they're still in the NC2A's, March Madness. So let's be praying for them and hoping for the best.
It was a great game, though I'm a little dismayed that the students' enthusiasm, which led to a Sheridan Road blockade, had a very different reaction from campus and Chicago police than a similar march that flowed over onto Sheridan Road last fall. That happened to be led by Black Lives Matters activists. I wonder why the different reaction.
Yeah, the earlier one resulted in arrests.
Okay, so we're going to go out to some music that you're about to hear. But right now, I'm telling you, for over 25 years, we've brought you live from the Heartland, now called Heartland at Home. For obvious reasons, we broadcast every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Central Time, by our friends at Loyola University Chicago's WLUW 88.7 FM. We also are streamed live at WLUW.org, and we are archived on our on our channel at youtube.com/Heartland Media. In addition, cablecast all week long on CAN TV channel 27. Thanks especially to our editor and intern, Luis Mejia, and our marvelous music producer, Lynn Orman-Weiss. Do good in the world.
The world needs all the good we do.
All power to the people.